Hi everybody, sorry I missed a couple of weeks out of the blue. I ended up having a bit of a last minute sort of fun decision to zoom the little guy up to Gold Coast and just do the theme parks before the actual school holidays, because then you just spend all day in line. So we zoomed off and had a great groovy time doing that. But yeah, that meant I had to push pretty hard on a few things before I left, and then been catching up since I got back, as well as got a bit of a case of man flu, so I'm just still restoring my normal vitality, getting back on top of things. But we're pretty much back now and ready to crack on with more low friction fun. Yeah, we had a great time on our little dash off trip. So here's the little guy looking nice and relaxed. Here's little guy looking somewhat less relaxed as starts to experience for the first time some actual roller coasters. I managed to look like I've been asked a particularly vexing maths problem, so I'm going to have to work on my roller coaster face. But yeah, little guys that are really sort of, I guess, just that perfect fun age now to start to do this stuff. So we'll be trying to do a bit more next year, where hopefully zooming off to Disney World in May. So yeah, there'll probably be some more times next year where I'll be off for some blocks as we go do some other type of low friction activities, such as many roller coasters as I can not completely terrify the little man on. But yeah, it's going to be awesome. All right, to actual ZFC stuff. So today is actually going to be, it should come out a pretty quick one, and I'll be zooming through it a fair bit. I just really want to get back to getting some content out again and get back in the swing of things. I'll be planning to put out some more, I guess, detailed content the next couple of videos. I'm going to try and have my first attempt really at doing like a Shonky Awards video, as well as a Top Products Awards video. A number of, I guess, media do such things in both, either article form or video form. And I've always found a lot of them quite interesting, and I think it's about time that I attempted to do the same, which will really be a good wrap on, I guess, what we've sort of learnt to date on some of the most concerning and interesting fronts, as well as, where companies and products have really helped move this whole area forwards. So I'll plan to do those really as the last couple of videos of this year to wrap up 2023. And so, yeah, today just going to run through a couple of topics that have been starting to come up recently. It's going to be more just a little update vid overall, just to, say g'day back again this week. Okay, first one, yes, we now can show you the launch of the, I guess, the web calculator, or the online calculator version of our cost to run modeling. So a huge thank you to Alvaro and OmniCalc. So OmniCalc do online calculators for just about anything you can think of. And it's been absolutely fantastic that they were keen to do one for zero friction cycling. Because we've got the cost to run modeling based on the testing, but it's fairly clunky, and it's been a little bit limited with regards to sort of how much scope in terms of just conditions and also group sets that I've been able to put together with the tables. The online calculator is really expanding on that, so it's going to bring a whole bunch more sort of functionality than what I have on the website tables, which is going to be fantastic. Right, yeah, so this side of things is always a key focus from zero friction cycling. Our testing has always been wear correlation based due to the myriad of issues and lack of industry standard around the outright efficiency testing. And also the fact that, the zero friction cycling testing, it is not a short clean lab based test. It is a test that goes on for a very long time, thousands of kilometers, with dry contamination and wet contamination, so on. So it's much more, I guess, real world, realistic and relatable, as opposed to an outright efficiency test in a lab where you really do not know at all what that product's behavior is going to be like once it's actually exposed to contamination, especially for off-road cyclists, gravel, mountain bike, cyclocross, you name it. So having that great data from, I guess, the league table of the, just really the outright performance of the lubricants that we do through our test, using that to try to model across as to what that means for you running that product on your group sets, which can range from being not too expensive to, these days, group sets can be just so expensive, and having I guess proven products that are going to give you 2, 3, 5 times the lifespan of your chain and cassette chain rings over products that just really show very concerning wear rates, despite being potentially big name brands and a lot of powerful marketing behind them and so on. That's a really key thing to I guess be able to just go to and know and compare based on what is really the most robust independent test data that we have in this space. What your likely experience and cost to run is going to be on product X versus product Y. Right, apologies if it sounds like I'm struggling to speak. It's because I am still struggling with the man flu. I think I'm running at around about 17 IQ today, down from my normal approximately 68. Words are only just making it from my brain to my mouth in time to actually say something. So apologies if today I'm speaking worse than normal. Anywho, let's go and have a look at the actual online calculator and see what magic we've got going on there. Alrighty, here we are. So let's have a look at, so we can, I guess, run through from the top. We can choose our terrain, choose our group set cost. So rather than specify group sets, because that would be a really sort of long list. Obviously, there's a whole lot out there. We put them into price range, and if you're unsure, just Google what your sort of replacement component costs may be. There will be, I don't think it's there yet, but there will be a option soon to actually input manually the cost of your components. I guess for the most sort of accurate comparison. We'll just choose mid-range for this one. I'll select one sort of near the top. Let's go dry off-road. So the lubricants are basically listed in order of awesomeness from the testing. So you can see if we chose M-Speed Wax for dry off-road cycling with a mid-range group set cost, we're looking at a cost to run for that 10,000 kilometers of cycling of basically 169.43, and you're getting a breakdown of really what the wear is on your components. And this is obviously based on the wear of the chain and components that we saw through the testing of the dry contamination block 2 in the ZSE test. If we change that to a lubricant that tested poorly, because this will help me explain still, I guess, what's the key issue with this modeling. Let's Wolftooth WT1. Again, saddens me that Wolftooth, as a great company, have their name on this product, which just really showed to absorb contamination extremely readily and become very abrasive very quickly, despite the fact that it's really marketed as an off-road lubricant. So, pretty much the cost to run has jumped up over 10 times. And the breakdown is telling you that you're going through quite a number of cassettes and chains and chain rings. Now, the issue that some will have, which I'll just sort of, I guess, take the opportunity on this sort of stuff to explain each time, is that people are going to look at these numbers and think, there is no way I'm going to replace that many chains and cassettes and so on in just 10,000 kilometers of cycling. And in the real world, really that is correct. The modeling does fall down when we get to the worst performing lubricants that we tested, simply because people just, if they were tracking their chain wear, then they would not be on this lubricant or any of the others down at the bottom end of the test list or on the league table. They would be switching lubricants pretty quickly once they saw what level of wear was actually occurring. What happens in the real world is they just continue to ride with the chain that's zoomed way past the actual recommended wear mark. It might be getting to 1.5%, even 2 or 2.5% I've seen. Absolutely, obviously chewed out the cassette and chain rings. So all of those are going to need replacing when they do replace them. But if they're only doing that very infrequently, because they're just really riding everything to death, then sure, their actual total cost to run will be lower, even though they're replacing a whole bunch of stuff when they do. They're just not replacing stuff that often to get to these totals, because for, I guess what they're really paying with, in effect, is that they're spending most of their cycling time riding a group set that's riding like a heap of crap. Chains become less and less efficient as they become more and more worn. Eating through the metal teeth of your cassette and chain rings is not low friction cycling. Obviously, it takes friction to eat through the metal of your components. and you're running obviously a heap of crap grinding paste as your lubricant. So quite often when they do replace everything and they've got a new chain and components on and they go for a ride, it's like, oh my God, bike feels amazing. They just spent all that time riding a bike that's riding like shit because, they're running components that are just worn like crap. So sure, you won't spend that amount of money if you're using these products as such, but obviously we can only model out based on the same rules that we're using with regards to how long is it taking the chain to wear to the 0.5% for that lubricant, and in general, how many chains will you get to a cassette if you're replacing them at 0.5% wear, how many chains to a set of chain rings, and obviously the cost involved of doing that. That's really the only way the modeling can work, and the rest we just have to apply sort of some real world sort of situational knowledge and logic if you don't get the same number there. But it's to give you the comparison. We're going to be trying to give you, I guess some sort of brief notations there on all of what I just rambled through, but hopefully that all makes a good bit of sense. Okay, yeah, so if you get a chance, have a play around with it. We have picked up, both in my tables and also the calculators we've been playing around, have been a couple of errors in the builds of these things as that's going to happen. So there may be still some errors in there. If you see any, please let me know. But yeah, it'll hopefully be a fairly powerful tool for people to help guide their lubricant choice to something that's a top proven product. Again, to all the manufacturers and great products out there that I haven't yet tested, we'll obviously continue to get to the products that have the best chance of excelling as I can. Really, I'm balancing all the time, testing for manufacturers that are booking in to have their products tested. Either it's about to go to market or it's on the market and they have a high belief in that product that it's going to be a top performer. So they're booking testing with zero friction cycling to benchmark that. Or they're sort of really trying to narrow down a production formula from a whole bunch of, sort of development formulas. So it might be doing a bunch of different tests to see, which one of theirs is actually the one that they should go to production with. So balancing all that testing for manufacturers, the book ZFC, along with when I get time to do testing of my own curiosity or volition, I'm normally sort of trying to rotate between picking a product that's been flagged to me over time, and really because I obviously get email requests all the time about what about this product, what about that product. And if I get, flagged to a particular product by the most number of people and it looks like it's not just all fluffy, absolutely nothing to substantiate marketing claims, it's a product that'll be on my long list as, okay, that's one for me to have a look at. It has I think a reasonable chance of testing extremely well and being potentially another top product that we could look to recommend and potentially stock. So, because obviously the more great products we can stock and recommend, the better. So we're always trying to find the products that will fit that. Just it all takes a lot of time to do so. Alternating with a product that I guess has given me the most concerns. There's a lot of products out in the market making a lot of marketing claims that you just look at and go, I'm really not so sure. So, probably one of the most recent cases of that would have been the Presticycle 1, was some just really, really just watch that video. Claims. There's claims and then there's claims. So, when I can get to do some testing on my own volition, I'm kind of alternating between those, but we've been really booked out with manufacturer testing. So the amount that I've been able to try to get to find of my own volition over the last few years has been a little bit lower. And also we've got other testing projects. We've got the one on the go at the moment, testing the chain cleaning products with Ceramic Speeds UFO and Silka Stripper. Post that, there's really a chain maintenance testing that I want to get to. So there's just so much stuff to be done and only so much sort of machine time and my time. But we'll get there. If you're a manufacturer that you think that you should be on the top of that list or on the league table, I could be getting to you in a year or 100 years. If you want to obviously get on there, then the best way to do that is obviously to contact me with regards to booking in a test slot. Alrighty. Yep, I'll wrap up my rambling there. Thank you again, Alvaro and OmniCalc. It's been a great I think, tool launch already, and it's going to be expanded on a little bit over time. So aside from being able to actually input your own group set, component cost values in the future, we'll hopefully be able to have a compare function as well. So things like that. So we'll always be trying to progress this side of things as much as we can. Okay, next fun little topic for today. Alrighty, so yes, a lot of the northern hemisphere now is moving well away from bikini weather. In some places, the temps can really get to sort of freezing and below freezing, and so more questions start to come in now from around the world in the northern hemisphere about what impacts the waxing may have in really cold temps, or what someone may be noticing or having a potential issue with their immersive waxing, and what can we do to help. So we'll run through what potential impacts you may have and some options to try to help improve that. And then a bit of a chat around sort of further options afield in case that doesn't help as well. Okay, so as things get really cold, pretty much the main change to the wax is that it will become harder. So that'll should make a bit of sense. Once the wax treatment's broken in, most times there's not really any negative impact from that point. The main thing that that can be a bit of a pain is that the break-in period can be quite long. So in, broadly call it normal ambient temps, the break-in period for an immersive wax treatment can obviously depend a little bit on the wax, but it's normally, it's going to be really stiff for the first few minutes of cycling. You can notice that the chain is quite draggy. You can notice that it might impact your shifting. After a few minutes, that sort of, initial real draggy feel will go away. By about 10 to 15 minutes, most people do not notice that the chain, has any additional drag or impact. Then it just, what we'll now call running normally. And stereotypically, by say around 30 minutes in, that treatment has, all the excess has been pressed out. The wax surfaces on all the parts of the chain are really polished up, and things are in their optimal zone for if you were to, do a race or anything like that. And then you've got that nice long period of your immersive wax treatment where everything is super. When it gets really cold, that initial break-in can drag on for a fair bit. Now, obviously, there's a lot of variance because there's cold and then there's really, really cold. So maybe you're still noticing it after 20 minutes. Maybe you're still noticing it after 45 minutes. If you're riding around in, minus 20 degrees in the snow, that break-in period may be quite lengthy, and that can be a bit of a drag. Now, it may not be so much of an issue if it's just on your commuter bike, as you're an awesome, intrepid commuter. It can be more of an issue if you're mainly sort of heading out on your, your fast group bunch ride, or you've got a race that you want to make sure your chain is in the right spot for. If it's on your sort of training chain, it's generally, again, it's not often that big of an issue. Yes, it's a bit of a drag for longer, but then once it's done, normally the treatment lifespan after that won't be unduly impacted. It can, in really cold temps, it can sometimes see a shorter treatment lifespan simply because the wax goes from just being, harder to it's actually become so hard that it's a bit more brittle, and that can lessen the treatment lifespan. In short, like a lot of, pretty much all lubricants, the harsher the conditions you're cycling in general, the shorter the treatment lifespan you can expect from whatever lubricant you're running on the chain. But that is relatively rare, but it can happen. Where it can become more of an issue with the more draggy break-in is that if you're frequently cycling, not only just in very, very cold temps, but also on, it's frequently wet, or the chain's getting wet from snow, that's meaning that you're going to need to re-wax quite a bit more frequently, because really any chain, any lubricant, once it's been properly wetted on a ride, really should be taken care of post that ride. So if you're frequently needing to re-wax your chain because it's going out in not only the freezing but also wet conditions, so you're constantly being hit with this longer, harder break-in period than what you would normally have in more normal conditions. Okay, the first go-to option is to just use an immersive wax compatible drip lubricant in conjunction with your immersive waxing, as we demonstrated in the previous video, Wax Life Like a Boss, where I demonstrate the hybrid approach. So basically that is to start with your chain immersively waxed, do your normal break-in, merrily cycle on your rides, and then when it's time to retreat the chain, as opposed to doing a re-wax, you would apply one of the immersive wax compatible drip lubricants, which at the moment the top three that we recommend are Silka's SS Drip, UFO Drip All Conditions, and True Tension Tungsten All Weather. So their wax base and additives are very similar enough to the immersive waxes, or the key commercial ones that we recommend, that you can just re-wax straight over the top of those without needing to do any cleaning, and all is groovy. Now, the wax drip lubricants don't have that break-in like you have post an immersive wax. So that can just make it a whole lot easier if you're only re-waxing, say, every approx fifth relube. We sort of tend to recommend to re-wax, say, approximately by every third to fifth application, so that you reset any contamination that is starting to build up in the chain. So that will just lessen the frequency by quite a bit with regards to how often you're re-waxing and how often you are needing to do that break-in post your immersive wax. Also, because the waxes used in the drips, they're an emulsified wax, there are some differences in the wax base. And whilst it does not negatively impact your immersive wax at all, it can tend to soften up a little bit your next immersive wax treatments, because it is mixing with a slightly different wax base. So it can mean that the break-in of your immersive wax treatment, if you have been using those wax strip lubricants in between, it is generally a little bit softer and a bit easier. So that approach can really help. However, there is a potential, faff or practicality caveat with, for some, with using this approach in cold conditions. All right, some people, their bike is stored indoors. And so where the bike is kept, it's at, what we'd say is fairly normal ambient temperatures. However, if your bike is stored in a garage or shed or, veranda, in winter, obviously things are going to be pretty darn cold, and your chain is going to be very cold. Now, whilst the wax lubricants I mentioned before are really at the better end of not having any initial penetration issues, some wax lubricants present with sort of fairly notable initial penetration issues to try to get past. We do have a advanced application guide in the instructions tab on the ZFC website, so you can, apply your wax lube, or really any lube, in a manner that is going to really help ensure that you don't have any penetration issues. Getting, especially wax lubricant, getting that down the side of the roller and underneath the roller is generally not much of an issue. It's really underneath the roller, there's a teeny tiny gap between the inner plate link shoulders. That is the only access to the pin. Getting down further through that very small gap to the pin and disseminating across the pin, that is typically the challenge that's presented to lubricants to get that deep. There is no access to the pin between the inner and outer plate link gap. There is a chamfer on the outer plate link for the pin rivet. The lubricant will just run around that. It does not get to the pin. So I won't bother rambling on and pulling up chain diagrams. Just trust me, you can't get lubricant access to the pin via any other pathway other than the very small gap between the inner plate link shoulders underneath the roller. And that is the part where lubricants can struggle to penetrate, more notably wax lubricants than wet lubricants. A lot of wax lubricants have spent, considerable time focused on ensuring that they do not get stuck at that point, that they do not have penetration issues, such as especially Silka's SS Drip and UFO Drip. So they have done a great job with that, and that has really shown up in the testing. However, they still do wish the lubricant to be applied at, a fairly normal ambient temp. Most of them will, say that it should be applied. I think, I'll go from memory here, but I think it's around 18 degrees Celsius, or some maybe as low as 16 degrees Celsius. But really, if you're getting below that, you can start to get issues. So it's already, been coming through a little bit where people go, look, is it okay if I just warm my lubricant? And unfortunately, the answer to that is no. warming the lubricant if it's below, say, 18 degrees Celsius. We'll use that as that is a safer temp. That's great. So, if where it's stored, even if it's indoors, if that room is getting down pretty cool during winter, for sure, warm the lubricant in a cup of hot water, not boiling, just hot water to warm up that lubricant. But your chain does need to be warm as well. Again, without boring you, just running through the numbers, normally a wax application is going to be around about, say, 3 to 5 mil. Your chain is just going to be over 100 links long. So you're looking at literally 0.03 to 0.05 mil per link that you're applying. If your chain is cold, even if your lubricant is warm, that very, very small amount of lubricant hitting cold chain metal, it will instantly cool that lubricant down to the same temperature as the chain. So there's really no point warming the lubricant to apply it to a cold chain. It does literally absolutely nothing. So it will instantly go to that and it will just thicken up and not penetrate further past the roller. So yeah, if you're looking to use a wax strip lubricant either in conjunction with your immersive waxing or as its own standalone option, just take into account for your own personal situation the practicalities of doing so if your bike is stored in a cold, and by cold, for wax application purposes, or wax strip, I should say, application purposes, we're really talking about sort of sub 18 degrees, maybe get away with it down to sort of 16, but definitely sub 16 degrees Celsius, you could expect to start to have some penetration issues, even with the best wax strips that have worked very hard to negate penetration issues. And yeah, obviously, absolutely, if your bike is in quite a cold spot because it's in a shed or a garage through winter in the Northern Hemisphere, then you're going to need to ponder what options may be practical for you. If you can't bring the bike in and let that come up to a room temperature with regards to the chain, if there's a reason why it needs to be stored, in the place it's stored, then that's the reason why it needs to be there, and it may not be practical to bring it in. Then, of course, you can just bring your chain in. However, you're then popping your chain on and off every time you need to re-lube. And it can be more faffy to try to re-lube your chain not on a bike. There are ways to do it, but it can be faffy, depending on your setup as well. So just consider that there may be some difficulties there. And so either doing the hybrid approach, it may rule that out if that's the case, or if you're looking at that sort of standalone, again, it may rule that out. Other wax strip lubricants that I haven't mentioned are likely to have, at least as big an issue, if not, notably more than the lubricants I've just mentioned before. Okay, another option, and this is one that I spoke with M-Speed Wax about. This is one that I guess was sort of top of their list. And again, I'm not advocating that this may be practical for you at all. I'm just going through the options. They often, M-Speed Wax are actually based in Minnesota. They are very avid winter cyclists, so they cycle through all the freezing, snowy temps, and are also avid cyclocross races, so they do the freezing, snowy winter CXs, and they've been doing this for decades, so they have probably the most experience, I would say, with immersive waxing and freezing temps. And so if you are still a bit stuck or want further information after this vid, M-Speed Wax are probably one of the best places to email and contact with regards to key hints and tips. However, they did say that they will often do the wax break-in run, just doing their warm-up pre-ride indoors. So to get warm themselves before they head out into the snow, they'll often just throw the bike on some rollers, or throw the bike on an ergo that's easy just to chuck it on. Do a 15 to 20 minute warm up indoors, and then the chain is all sweet when they head outside. They've done the break in perfectly fine in normal temps, and so they're not going to have that sort of long draggy break in the freezing temps outside. Again, depending on your setup, that may be a easy practical solution for you. It may be completely and utterly impractical, and just not be something you can put on the table at all. All right, so it's really not for me sitting here in generally lovely Adelaide to tell you what's practical for you to be on immersive waxing or wax lubricants in really freezing seasons. You know, again, it's going to be so person and demographic dependent. If you're able to get past that sort of draggy wax break in freezing temps on your commuter bike, and it's really who cares, then it's fine. If you're somebody who's frequently wanting to do a good group ride, finding that break in quite a drag, finding that you need to re-wax fairly frequently because you're often hitting wet conditions, so you're sort of being hit with that more often, and that's a pain in the butt, then it's a pain in the butt. Using the wax-compatible drip lubricants may be a great solution if your bike is stored indoors, and you can easily apply that. If it's stored somewhere really cold, that option, to help with the situation, just again, it may not be practical for you to do. If those paths are simply not practical for you, then I'm not going to sort of sit here and even as obviously a massive proponent of immersive waxing, tell you that you should just forge ahead and stick with it and get past all the faff. If it's not practical for you, it's not practical for you. And yes, you should consider options that are going to make your life easier to get through these harsh winter conditions. So if the path isn't wax based, obviously that pretty much leaves wet based. I'm going to exclude for now. I mean, I could go down a rabbit hole of potential dry lubricants like dry lubrication spray and so on. We just really don't have the knowledge and data behind how they would perform in freezing cold conditions. Dry spray coatings, like say a dry aerosol lubricant, would typically have really short lifespans because you're putting such a thin layer of, typically not a super long lasting lubrication or lubricant on, that it's unlikely to be practical. So really your best chance of having something that's going to actually stay lubricating your chain for a long period is going to be a top wet lubricant. So obviously the top wet lubricants that we've tested so far to date are Silka Synergetic, Silka Synergy, Rex Black Diamond, and Revo Lubes. Nix Friction, which you can get in America, is also a really good product. That was sort of one of the top wet lubes back when we started. And again, it's one of these things that's sort of tricky because there are just literally countless wet lubricants out there. Some may be awesome, some may be terrible, and everything in between. I could test for the next 10,000 years to try to get through, the majority of the wet lubricants on the market. So it's going to be a fair while coming, but we get through what we can, and what we find to be the best, we obviously have at the top of the league table based on their test results. And if they're good enough, then we stock them and recommend them. Obviously going for something that's not really thin. So a lot of the typical, say, dry drip lubricants are unlikely to be a great option. Whilst I cannot test for sub-zero temperatures, and there may be changes, it's going to be a safer bet that if the wet lubricant has really strong results with regards to extremely low wear and really good treatment lifespan in the normal ZSC test, then even if they are impacted, it's starting from a great spot. If it starts up here and it comes down to here, that's probably still going to be a hell of a lot better than a lubricant that starts here and just goes, to the basement. So I hope that makes sense. So really still the best would be, if you're going to go to a wet lubricant, go with a proven one that I guess has shown itself to be a top product, and run with that. Now, obviously there are going to be other impacts with moving away from wax and going to wet with regards to contamination gathering and the product becoming more abrasive. So there's going to be some maintenance level involved. There's just no way of getting around, if you're cycling in very harsh conditions, that you may want to focus on giving your hardest working component that's completely exposed, sorry, motorbike zooming by, some love and attention if you want to keep that component lower friction, and thus, most importantly, lower wear, because not only for the chain, but for the life of your other components as well. Okay, so yeah, it's really going to come down a lot to, what's the right path balance for you. So if you go down the wet lubrication path, if you're being hit with a lot of wet conditions, whilst again things can last okay through that actual ride, the water just brings in so much crap. Doesn't matter what lubricant path choice you are running, water brings a whole bunch of crap into your chain, and it goes right through, so it's pressed into whatever lubricant you're running deep inside the chain. And pretty much unless you take intervention to remove it, even if you add more lubricant over the top, what's in there is still largely in there. You get very, very little flush cleaning just from adding 5 mil more lubricant on top of your 100 plus link chain. You improve your lubrication to contamination ratio for sure, but it's very limited with regards to what it can do to remove the contamination. So, to a degree, unless you take intervention, your next ride in the sunshine can be, or what passes for sunshine at those seasons, it can still be similar-ish to the friction and wear that's occurring as if you were still kind of riding out in the wet. Not as bad, but it's sort of, you're still keeping it in a not great, sort of ballpark. And so, as I've covered before with some of the waxing stuff, to me, the easiest and most fun way to reset contamination in a chain post harsh conditions rides is via doing a re-wax. But, if you've got that sort of break-in faff that is not fun, then that's one practicality aspect to weigh up. Versus, how often do you need to do some sort of solvent flush cleaning intervention if you're going down the wet lubricant path, either on or off bike? How much time and faff and cost is that to keep things in a decent place, considering the lubrication challenge presented to you in your, current season? Yeah, so it's going to be really obviously individual as to what's going to work out the right path for you. And part of that also, you have to take into account your components that you're running. The risk of getting caught out with running a chain that's got a whole bunch of crap in it and has a bit higher friction and wear than what we would really be sort of like or be optimal. It's different if you're running 10-speed Ultegra as to if you're running XX1 T-Type or ECAR or a lot of Axis Red components. The cost difference between upgrading through certain components fairly quickly versus others can be pretty massive. Some people have just simply dedicated winter bikes that they just run through the harsh winter seasons and then replace all the drivetrain components for not much money when it comes to next winter. So everyone's path is different. If it's a sort of more speedy oriented bike in group riding and so on, or you've got the one bike with nice components on it, what you have to balance with regards to your particular riding and the practicalities of what you can do with your particular home setup, it's really going to be an individual choice. I just hope that by just running through some of that, it may help with you weighing up some of those decisions to choose a path that's, going to be best for you. Bear in mind that sometimes there can be some experimentation with this. You don't have to stress that, the path you choose is absolutely 100% going to be the path that won't let you down. Sometimes there is experimentation. Try one path one winter or for half a winter, and maybe you switch to a different path and see how that one works out for you. As always, it is great, especially if your components are worth a bit, to accurately track your chain wear. So get a good chain wear checker so you'll get a better indication as to what path is actually working pretty well or maybe not so well, based on how fast you are abrading through your stuff from the conditions that you're riding in. All right, last bit to weigh up today is rust or corrosion on the chain. If all you're worrying about is cold, you're not hitting wet stuff, then it's not really going to be an issue any more than other times of the year. If you are being hit with wet conditions, though, so I guess most especially for either immersive waxing and or a lot of the wax lubricants, I guess it's a bit of a golden rule that you can't just ride in wet conditions and then come home and park your bike and expect that things will be all super when you return back to your bike the next day or in a couple of days' time. Very easily, some oxidation can start to occur on the rollers. It would typically occur on the rollers before the plates. Not always, but most times. And it's just something that, especially taking into account if you're riding on salted roads, but even a lot of trails where, you've got a lot of, dirt and, abrasive contamination coming in, it's going to have some typically mineral content of something. So there's just going to often be catalysts, or oxidation, rust catalysts that's going to be hitting your chain along with the water. So generally speaking, and this will be true for a lot of wet lubricants as well, whilst wet lubricants can sometimes keep some sort of oily film or coating on that can protect you for being able to park your bike for days post-wet ride, that's not always assured. General good practice, say, be it waxing, be it wax strip, be it even with wet lube, wipe the chain when you get home and apply a protective top-up coating just to ensure that it is all okay. I do get asked from time to time with regards to anti-corrosion chains. Once upon a time, I did stock the anti-corrosion chains, and I haven't done a lot of testing specifically for anti-corrosion chains, but what seemed to be a bit of a general trend is that for giving you anti-corrosion protection on the chain, they tended to not give you the wear lifespan extension treatment, such as proper chrome hardening of the pins and rollers, things like that. So they tended to be, I guess, without those wear protections and with operating in sort of fairly harsh conditions, that you got a chain that wouldn't rust, but one that would wear out really quickly and then potentially take your other components out with it or do some sort of fairly premature damage to them. So that's not awesome. Overall, I've decided that it's the best path to recommend is to just show your chain a little bit of focus and love such that it's not going to oxidize or rust. If you are doing the right thing by your chain post-wet ride, even if that is as simple as adding a top-up coating of drip lubricant to it when you get back, it's going to protect it from rusting, and it's also going to put it into a better place for your next riding as opposed to doing nothing. If you're doing that, you won't have to worry about your chain starting to oxidize or rust, and that it's just better to have a quality chain that has the wear, lifespan treatments, and do that as opposed to buy an anti-corrosion chain where you can be lax on that, and it's likely to have a shorter lifespan. So we've kind of gone away from bothering with sort of focusing on finding a good anti-corrosion chain and stocking those. We're going down the path of recommending what's best for you to look after your not anti-corrosion chain. There may be potential sort of fringe cases that somebody really needs, an anti-corrosion chain, such as even during the period that the bike is parked during the day at work, if things are starting to oxidize, before it can be looked after back at home. I have heard of that. It's pretty rare, but I have heard of that happening. It's like salted road commuting and so on. If you have been using a anti-corrosion chain of a particular model, let me know. And if you found that the wear life through some sort of hard winter season has been quite good, let me know what that chain model was and also what lubricant you're using with it. And we might be able to sort of put that on a short list to try to have a look at when I get a spare testing spot to test some chains again. Right, last thing I always like to cover for this sort of stuff is, consider running multiple chains, on rotation. If you're riding frequently in harsh conditions, then, you're sooner or later you are always going to need another chain. If you're hammering one chain all the time in, what is a pretty extreme challenge, obviously, even on the best lubricants, it's going to wear out. So pre-buying your next chain, it's not costing you anymore. In fact, it's really very likely to save you some expense by way of you're guaranteeing you're going to get 2 chains through your cassette if you're running 2 chains on rotation. And normally if you're running 3 chains on rotation, you're pretty much guaranteeing you're going to get 3 chains through that one cassette. And if you've got an expensive cassette, that can really, really mean something. So aside from it safeguarding against how many chains you're going to get through a particular group set component, it can really take the pressure load off the maintenance side because you've got typically more time. You can pop one chain off and pop your next sort of chain that's been freshly re-lubed or re-waxed, onto the bike, and then you've got time to do some maintenance on the chain, be it a flush clean, be it a re-wax or a re-lube. Now, sorry, nearly lost my train. Bear in mind, if you are removing a chain Post a wet ride, you don't want to be storing it for days unprotected. Most times, so if you are removing a chain because you want to put your fresh chain on, and that chain has seen a wet ride and you don't have time, or it's impractical for you to take care of it at the time, just do something as simple as wipe the chain dry with a microfiber cloth, wrap it in another microfiber cloth, and just, if you've got a drawer or something like that, stick it in that drawer or cupboard. You will then generally get multiple days of protection from it oxidizing if you do that, ready for when you can take action. And that may simply be rewaxing multiple chains then at once, because it basically takes you the same time to rewax 2 or 3 chains as it does to do one, or just take care of the maintenance you're planning on doing. And your multiple chains as opposed to just the one chain that you're hammering all the time. So what can often happen to someone, say an avid cyclist, they're fitting in a whole bunch of riding as well as work and family, and so getting to maintenance can be tough. Hammering the one chain in harsh conditions, what often happens is, even if someone's sort of trying to keep a bit of an eye on their chain wear tracking, is that chain wear, especially if you're just using drip lubricants, so this is really not so much an issue at all for those who are immersive waxing every time, but if you are just drip lubrication path, be it wax or wet, if the maintenance for that particular path, when it's being hit with a whole bunch of crap all the time, 2 things tend to happen that catch people out. Number one, the ratio of contamination to lubrication just continues to get worse. So sure, you're relubricating frequently and so on, but all that crap that's being brought in really isn't going anywhere unless you are doing maintenance to remove it. So the lubricant running in your chain is just becoming more and more abrasive. So yeah, if you do, say, 500 kilometers of cycling, what's happening inside your chain is, X level abrasive. 1,000 kilometers later, what's happening in your chain, it's going to be a whole different level of abrasiveness. Secondly, a lot of the quality chains will come with some good wear protection treatments. They'll have a low friction coating as part of the chain, the chain metal surface coating anyway, and there's often chromium plating treatments on the pins especially. Those wear protection treatments can be compromised after they've been abraded on for X period of time. So quite often with drip lubricant only chains with sporadic maintenance or intervention, wear rates on the chain are far from linear. So the wear rate for, say, the first half of that chain's lifespan can be, we'll just call it again X, and then the wear rate in the second half of that chain's lifespan can be, ramped up quite a lot. And so someone can check their chain wear after, 6 weeks or 2 months of harsh cycling and think, well, it seems to be okay. And then they check it another couple of months later and it has completely ripped past the wear mark, and it's buggered their cassette and made some decent inroads into their chain rings. Again, multiple chains just really help safeguard against getting caught out with that sort of ramp up with the non-linear wear rates that you'll see if you're riding a lot in harsh conditions, especially with just the drip lubricant path. And if your maintenance is not really frequent to reset that, it's just very easy to get caught out. Alrighty, so yeah, that'll be enough rambling from me. Sorry, my style, I'll never get to try to script things, so it's just me talking through the ins and outs of, I guess, the main options that we know at this time for you in cycling in such conditions. It's an area, though, unlike, I guess, what we say is just more normal cycling, where if someone asks what's the best, lubrication path, I can pretty much, always just say, well, look, here's your top option. Immersive waxing, if that is something that you can do. If not, immersive waxing in conjunction with the wax compatible drip lubricants. If not, the top wax drip lubricants are generally best for most cyclists. For road only, a number of the top wet lubricants that we found are also a great option, because the contamination levels in dry road cycling are usually very low, so your maintenance levels are not too bad. So we can sort of run through A, B, C, D fairly easily. For this, it does become a lot more individual, because there's going to be so much variance between, how cold, how much crap is your chain being exposed to in the riding that you do, from, not wet that often to often quite wet and potentially salted roads and all sorts of crap. How much are you cycling? What type of cycling? Is it sort of still fast group training versus commuting? What's your setup at home with regards to, can you break in the wax chain? Can you bring your chain inside? All that stuff. So they're things that are going to be very individual. There's just not this, I guess, magic silver bullet path. I can say, if you ride all the time in really, really cold weather, this is what your best option is for every cyclist, period. So same as, at the end of the day, what's the best bike? There's no one best bike that is the best bike for every single cyclist. So it's a bit like that. Right, but yeah, I hope the information though helps you try to narrow down what's you think may be the right path for you to try. And again, emphasis on don't stress, if you don't get it right the first time, or the second time. This is a pretty tricky area to try to get really nailed, or just get to what's optimal for you from, I guess, the balance of A, trying to keep your chain lubrication low friction and wear, versus B, how much time you go, and faff you're going to invest in, I guess, achieving that state. There is often a compromise. Just understand that the challenge of having a really low friction, low wear chain, riding frequently in really harsh conditions, there's just no way around it. It's a challenge. I guess imagine, always a good analogy or comparison is to say, imagine if you took the seals off all of your bearings, so your bottom bracket and wheel bearings, pulley wheels, and you're out riding, doing the same riding that you're doing. The challenge it would be to keep your bearings, running silky smooth and low friction, as opposed to running notchy, gritty, high friction, high wear, and very quickly damaged. To try to keep your bearings in a great place, if they didn't have seals on them to keep all the crap out, that they would require flush cleaning and re-greasing every ride, and they would still go to crap comparatively a lot faster than if they just had seals on. Your chain is just completely exposed to all this crap. There is going to be a balance to friction and wear and time, and which path enables you to achieve the right, I guess, middle ground. Be it the options we ran through, including things like running multiple chains on rotation, stuff like that. So yeah, have a ponder. Hope that helps. Pick a path, play around with that, assess it. Best way to assess it, obviously, is via chain wear tracking. That's just going to be your number one indicator as to how well things are working. Rapid wear, not working so well. Really low wear, especially factoring the conditions, working really well. And if it's not going as well as you are hoping, consider an option B path or try an option C, and you'll find, if not the first time, probably by the second or at least the third, you'll find which is the right path for you. Okay, so yeah, have a great weekend of cycling, hopefully low friction cycling, even if you're riding in sub-zero freezing and wet temperatures, and awesome you for going out and doing so. I will try to be back next week as sort of getting back to hopefully a weekly schedule as per normal. Maybe, because things do get pretty busy pre-Christmas, and then we'll have a bit of a Christmas break and so on, maybe some sporadic video releases coming up. But I'm going to start work as soon as I can, when I can, in between things on the Shonky Awards. I'll see if I get that out next Friday. If not, it'll be the Friday after. All right, have a great weekend, everyone, and I'll catch you on the next one.